So how will justice be ensured for Shraddha? Is this an open and shut case? What are still the challenges that lie ahead for the police to ensure that Aftab is successfully convicted? What are the lessons that one can learn from this case? These are just some of the questions we'll raise tonight. Swati Maliwal is chairperson of the Delhi Commission of Women. She joins us. Kiran Bedi is former IPS officer. Tanveer Ahmed Mir is senior criminal lawyer. And Adarsh Mishra is a forensic expert. Appreciate all of you joining us. I'll come to you first, Swati, because you've publicly called for the swiftest and the surest maximum punishment for Aftab. Do you want to be more specific? Because in previous cases like the Tandoor murder case, if you can recall, Sushil Sharma in 1995 got life imprisonment and is now out after having served 22 years in jail. Are you saying that you want the maximum punishment, i.e. death penalty for Aftab?
Absolutely, Rajdeep sir, because you see the condition, the manner in which this crime was executed, it is one of the most brutal and most gruesome crimes ever. I have been in the position of the Delhi Commission for Women chairperson for the past 7 years. I can say on record that this is one of the most scary cases that I have come across. We have issued a notice to the Delhi police because I want to understand under what circumstances does a girl disappear into thin air in the state of Delhi 6 months back, and yet no action was taken. There was no report that was made, and the fact that Aftab was able to kill her brutally, cut her off into 36 pieces, store these pieces in the fridge, and then every day at a particular time go out and dispose these pieces across different parts of Delhi. I really don't understand what kind of a policing we have and what kind of a society we have. So we've issued a notice to the Delhi police because I want the best investigation to happen in this case so that the maximum punishment is given to Aftab. Apart from that, I also want to understand from Delhi police, did Shraddha file any complaint with them? Was a PCR call made? Was any kind of a complaint for domestic violence or sexual abuse against Aftab reported in the past? I think all that information is also very crucial because one needs to understand what is it that the Delhi police did in order to prevent a crime like this. At the end of the day, I am extremely shocked. It's the most gruesome murder. It is very disturbing, and I want that the maximum punishment should be given to this man because it is clearly an act of a well thought and planned murder. It is not something that he did in, some anger. It is clearly something that he planned, that he thought through, and he executed it in the most horrible manner possible. And if you look at it, I have also been hearing from the media all these reports coming in where it is being said that in the fridge that he stored Shraddha's head and other body parts, he also stored his own food there. He brought women from dating sites into his own house when her Shraddha's body parts were still there in the fridge. So what kind of a person does that? Clearly the strongest investigation needs to happen, and we have seen.
No, before I go to my other guests who will look at the investigation aspects, all I'm asking you is, while it's very easy to today say what was the Delhi police doing, this is a psychotic killer clearly. Someone, who was unhinged in many ways, but also ruthless and cold-blooded in the way he killed. The fact is, crimes against women, Delhi, Swati Maliwal, is still seen as a city unsafe for women. So, we can blame the Delhi police and question them, but there will be questions. I mean, Aftab's case cannot be used to target in a way policing. There's a larger issue of people like Aftab, and there may be others out there who perhaps are individuals who are out there to be cold-blooded killers.
No, I totally agree. I'm not just targeting the police. I'm of course asking this very relevant question as to what really happened. How did this girl just disappear into thin air and there was absolutely no trace? I'm also asking a question about the kind of society that we live in. Just because this girl was in a live-in relationship, she got estranged from her own family and friends, and then after that there was absolutely no support system for her. So even the place that she was living in, her neighbors, nobody actually realized that this girl has gone missing. So it raises a very large issue about how the crimes against women in the capital are really increasing, and there is absolute lack of support systems. At least in the cases where a couple fear honor killing, there are certain judgments by the Supreme Court, there are judgments by honorable high courts, and steps are taken in order to give them protection. But what happens when a girl like this enters a live-in relationship with her own choice and gets estranged from her family, and then there is no support system? So in fact, we've been discussing that what all policy changes they need to be done, because girls like that should at least have some support system where they can walk in and they can explain that the relationship is getting toxic and probably get some counseling and get some help. So I feel that at the end of the day, Aftab needs to be given the strongest punishment, but this is also an issue where we need to have the Delhi police functioning at its level best, because we don't want the repeat of a Chhavla gang rape and murder case where after 10 years the men were let off because there was a shoddy investigation.
That's an important point you make, that the last thing we want is a repeat of what just happened in that case a few days ago, where the Supreme Court no less let off the gang rapists in that case in Delhi. But Kiran Bedi, do you fear that this case can also in some way go down that route, or do you believe this is an open and shut case? We don't have the murder weapon at the moment. We will have to see what kind of a confession Aftab has made. Do you see this to be an open and shut case?
I do. I do see this as an open and shut case, because the kind of recoveries they are making, seizures they are making under Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act, which is by the accused directed recovery. It's not a planted recovery. It's an accused directed. This is relevant, and this has very heavy evidence. Number one, the kind of evidence they're finding in the house, the kind of evidence they get recovering the body parts. Third is the kind of information technology which they will get of his prior conduct and post conduct will settle the narrative. And well, the many critical elements are yet to be recovered. One is the weapon, which he has yet to recover. I think they're going for a narco test and the liar detect. Doesn't matter if it's not relevant for a court. Doesn't matter. But it will give them the peep into the mind of the man to understand the mens rea. It will be another tool for investigation. But I'm not investigating this case on this channel. I have something else to say. Rajdeep, if I have your permission.
Please go ahead.
That is, that I think we do not know the real extent and pattern of domestic violence in this country. And I don't think we ventured out to do any national survey, state-wise national survey. If we can do a sanitation Swachhta survey, we can do a health survey, we can do many other scheme survey. We need to get into a security survey concerning women domestic violence. The pattern, extent, state-wise, responses, and how the women are dealing with it. That is when, like Swati said, I think will emerge strategies and policies. And it should be an annual survey. I think it should be annual social audit. I would call it.
So you're seeing this as a violence, you're seeing this as the kind of violence that you believe takes place behind four walls in many homes. In this case, of course, reaches this gruesome level where the person chooses to allegedly chop off his girlfriend into several bits. You're saying this is, you see a troubling pattern that has not been looked at often enough. Some might result in just plain domestic violence. Here there is murder of the most foul kind. Am I correct?
I think, yes. Many women are suffering very heavy violence short of this. And I think they're living in prisons of their own. And probably living for, say, social stigma, parents' care, children's care, etc. I think we do not know. And I think it will be a Pandora's box open. I think we need to know. Domestic Violence Act is not enough, because this is not being used enough, not being reported enough, and not being expedited enough and getting resolved enough. Okay. So I think we need to also look at the way the act is being used. And how much is it known? I'm sure there's an ignorance about it amongst the women themselves.
I'm going to take that to Tanveer Ahmed Munir to look at for a moment, the investigation itself. Do you believe it's an open and shut case, Tanveer? Or do you believe that there will be challenges for the police? A narco test is not admissible. Is a confession that if they've got a confession from Aftab enough then to nail him?
You see, no investigation can ever be said to be as a case in black and white where you can return a finding of guilt tomorrow morning. And one thing is here that there is no eyewitness account, so the case and the trial will be on principles of circumstantial evidence, which means that in a case of circumstantial evidence, the prosecution always has a far more difficult job in comparison to an ocular testimony in a court of law. Now, what here the cops should do is, number one, don't relegate their cases only to confessions or to the last seen theory that the girl was living in an apartment and if she disappeared, then you must explain where she went. That's a very weak charge and that gets blown away. A few stains in kitchen of a blood will not be good evidence by any stretch of imagination to return a finding of guilt. But I agree one thing, that in a case of circumstantial evidence, if the accused, pursuant to his confession, takes the cops to places where he dumps important evidence, for example, body parts, then if that is the way the information is garnered by police, then in that circumstantial evidence case, that is a very strong piece of evidence and a strong circumstance tomorrow to hold the person as guilty.
So you're saying that you will need circumstantial evidence to back the confession that the police has allegedly extracted from Aftab. Am I correct?
The confession is absolutely inadmissible evidence and will not come to the aid of the cops at all.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
But the other pieces of evidence, for example, recovery of bones, now that's where your fourth speaker will become important is, that if the DNA is traced and matched, then a DNA expert can testify and bring it and drive home the prosecution case that this is the bone of the deceased. And if the accused points out the place where bones have been recovered, then that's a solid piece of evidence. Simultaneously, now any defense counsel worth his salt in this case is going to take a defense of insanity. You see, our society today is plagued with mental illness, and this person is at the moment, in terms of the horrific act which is attributed to him as alleged and not proven in a court of law, he certainly is a case of extreme schizophrenia, paranoia. He has a psychotic behavior. At what point of time did he commit the murder? We don't know. Now, chopping the body pieces and then dumping them is an act of what you call as desecration of the evidence, so as to save yourself from legal punishment. Now, that is only 201, and the main case will be 302. So any defense counsel will certainly say that, look here, Your Honor, my client is insane, and claim certain defenses. So what I would expect the cops also to do is to send him for a psychiatric analysis as well, and rule out the possibility of what you call as legal insanity, so that tomorrow is not available as a defense or maybe available as a defense.
Interesting the way you're putting it and giving our viewers a sense of what actually Aftab's lawyer may well do, claim insanity, but the forensic challenge, Adarsh Mishra, is one of the immediate challenges. A DNA test likely on Shraddha's father. How easy or how difficult is this? Once the body parts are located, is it easy in a case like this to ensure complete 100% forensics?
If we have the body parts of the victim and we have the blood profile, like blood sample of the parents of the victim, so DNA can be extracted from the parents as well as from the body part, means the chopped body part of the victim. See, in case if the skin or tissues are decomposed, then further DNA can be extracted from the bones also. So that is very important. Even if in case the face of the victim is not identifiable due to decomposition, like if later on the police get the face part of face part, then if it is decomposed, means like only skull is left, then DNA like superimposition or like facial superimposition can be done,
right,
which may reveal that this face belongs to the Shraddha or not.
Okay.
Other than DNA profiling.
Okay, let me take that to Kiran Bedi. In terms of Kiran Bedi, you might recall the Sushil Sharma case, and that was the Tandoor murder of 1995. And there was attempts made by Sushil Sharma and his lawyers to somehow or the other ensure or attempt to try and suggest that Sushil Sharma should be given a lesser punishment. Eventually he was given a life. There was an attempt made to suggest his rarest of rare, he should get death. He got life in the end. One of the pleas that Tanveer Ahmed Mir has suggested Aftab's lawyers could do is insanity. Is there a worry that in such cases, once the camera gaze goes off, there is a tendency of courts in a way not to treat this as rarest of rare, but just to treat it as an insane act, and insanity then becomes a defense? Do you go along with what Swati Maliwal said, give him maximum punishment?
Well, I first of all agree with the lawyer who just spoke before me, that we need to first of all rule out his insanity defense plea in anticipation. I think the investigation should anticipate the likely defenses which the defense lawyer will come up with. And one of these would be that he kept seeing her head in the fridge every time, thinking of her. No, the disposal, I believe, of the head as last is not insanity, but it was to minimize the disclosure of her identity. So somehow see so that he doesn't get caught. I think so we need to do what the lawyer has said, rule out temporary or legal insanities, whatever, so that this defense plea is preempted, number one. What did Swati say?
Swati wanted maximum punishment.
And I would want day-to-day trial in the next 6 months. I want expeditious trial going live.
You're saying go for a fast-track court, expeditious day-to-day trial, am I correct?
Yes.
Because, you know, in the Naina Sani Tandoor murder case, the Sushil Sharma accused case, Tanveer Ahmed Mir, Naina Sani killed on July 2, 1995, body allegedly chopped into pieces, put into the tandoor to burn. It was in 2003 that a Delhi court awarded him the death sentence. High Court upheld it in 2007. In 2013, 18 years later, the Supreme Court commuted it to life term. In 2018, he walked out of jail after 29 years. Could this case head that way?
It could, if we don't keep the pressure on.
You're saying if you don't, you're saying, Kiran, you're saying if you don't fast track it, that could happen. Tanveer Ahmed Mir, is that something, is this going to be a long drawn out case?
Normally it will be. See, Rajdeep, what plagues our courts today is a lot of cases, less judges. So if you go typically to a Delhi court in a sessions trial case, for example, in Patiala House courts or Saket courts, now the judges have at least nothing less than 20 to 25 cases of where evidence is to be recorded. Now, if 2 witnesses come in one case, you're done for the day. Therefore, ordinarily, what happens is that even for people who are in custody, the normal date is given of 2 months, which means 6 dates a year. Now, therefore, the delays are there just because we are overburdened and we don't have. But if there is an order, for example, if the High Court says that we want this case to be done and dusted in about 8 months or within 1 year period of time, then obviously a sessions court which is going to try this murder, this horrific murder, is going to organize his diary in a particular manner and will also call upon the defense counsels to get geared up and start the trial. See, for example, in Unnao rape case, the then Honorable Chief Justice said that finished me the trial in 40 days. I went to defend the accused, we finished it in 32 days. So it's not that it can't be done. At the end of the day, what you need to do is to have a fair result. You know, in a democracy, what we should be bothered about is that the prosecution gets a very good chance to build up its case. The defense also gets a good chance to build up its case, and you know, finally the justice is served.
But in normal, you know, I'm looking at cases like this, similar kind of cases, the Neeraj Grover murder case, where a TV executive was killed in Mumbai, body dismembered, chopped body parts were set to fire in a forest, killed by a naval officer. And in that case, the local court sentenced the naval officer to 10-year imprisonment, and Maria Susairaj, who was his accomplice, was sentenced to 3 years for destroying evidence. The Nithari serial murders, interestingly, December 2006, we are now in 2022, While the murderers are lodged in Dasna jail, their appeals are still pending. So presumably, even if Aftab gets a life imprisonment, he will appeal to it and perhaps come out 15, 16, 18 years down the line.
Well, that actually, you see, if a person has to come out, see, we don't work like United States where somebody gets 250 years in prison. You know, we work in a life sentence mechanism where life is life. Unless and until the sentence review board doesn't basically, after considerable period of time spent in custody, like 20 years, 18 years of actual time done, decide that, all right, fine, it's time for you to integrate back into the society. So we may recommend your candidature for an early release. That's also a part of the law. That's a part of the system. That's how a Sushil Sharma, you know, tomorrow is released in a tandoor cart. And, you know, to a larger extent, Rajdeep, yes, we are going through a very violent phase. Now, yesterday you saw a man in Madhya Pradesh slitting the throat of his girlfriend, you know, just because he suspected her of adultery, and taping it on video and telecasting it to the whole world. Last year, a person, you know, murdered his pregnant wife, chopped her into pieces in Bihar because he was a railway employee, got a promotion and wanted 4 lakh rupees more from his father-in-law. So somewhere, you know, the anxiety into people to resort to violent disorders is on great rise.
So therefore, how do you therefore use a sentence as a deterrent? Kiran Bedi, you want a final word on that?
Just one word. Let this imprison. In the event he narrowly escapes the death sentence, let the sentence be life imprisonment till death inside the prison. I think that will be a very heavy penalty.
Yes, Tanveer, you wanted to respond to that.
This Supreme Court, Madam Bedi, has said that life means life. Now, no court says that life means 14 years, or life means 20 years, or life means 25 years. Life is meant that you have to naturally die in a prison. But then the other laws, the other rules, the jail manuals come into play, where somebody is done, you know, if you had a single case against you, and you did say about 25 years in custody, and over the last 24 years, your behavior has been fine, is it time for reintegration of that person into society? So we have a committee for that all over the states, all over the country. These are bureaucrats, these are psychologists, these are doctors, these are people who stand in the society and they decide it. That's also a part of the law. And reintegration, you know, will be like, right now, it's good investigation, proper investigation, don't relegate, don't keep it loose, try and basically get evidences. You are in a case of circumstantial evidence, there is no direct evidence, so beware. If one of the circumstances falls apart, like Rajdeep in Indrani Peter Mukherjee's case, the bones which were found were examined by forensics. Now one forensic says there is no DNA, another forensic says there is little DNA. Now any defense expert will come and testify and demolish these experts. Tomorrow you will have an acquittal. Now everybody is on bail.
So
that's how the law works.
So you're saying ensure first that you have a foolproof case where nothing is left to chance, and then perhaps go what Dr. Bedi is saying, ensure that it is fast-tracked. But the first step is to ensure a complete foolproof investigation as an open and shut case. As I said, this is a dastardly case that has shocked and outraged us.
That's exactly how you will subserve the interest of society.
Okay. I appreciate my guest joining us on the show tonight. This is a case that has shocked us because of the sheer brutality involved of the individual Aftab. But the fact is, and this was mentioned in this discussion, Shraddha's gruesome murder is not the only one that will send shockwaves across the country.